Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central. A little different this time around. I got Lisa right next to me. I'm joined by Lisa and BZ. Thanks, ladies, for coming to play with me today. I don't really have a talk bit, but I just wanted to play. And I will say, I'll topic. I'll start it.
You topic then.
I'll topic.
Go ahead, topic.
I will topic. No, stop it. No, I'll top it. I loved what you put out this morning. Your short little 10-minute video that you put out. Mm-hmm. Lisa has a story about that, and I do too. Actually, it's like it was very inspirational.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for that.
Yep. Cool. What's your story about it, Lisa?
Well, I've been kind of noodling on another heart song, and you gave me direction.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. It's funny. I drove up early this morning. It was pitch black when I left here, and it was very, very foggy, you know, the kind of foggy that is beautiful and cool, especially when I have my real big camera and long lenses and everything. But when it's dark and you know, not all that cool. Anyway, so at first I figured, well, I had a long drive. I had to go up to the car dealership because there was a recall on my vehicle, and I needed to. It had been a while for getting an appointment, and I was chuckling. So this is actually maybe a good story because it kind of gives some other tools in there of how not to let 3D type things, you know, bother you. In fact, usually I just chuckle or laugh out loud quite joyously, big guffaws. But I read the letter that they sent you, and it had all their legalese and everything, and the one line that really pertained to the thing, I think it was a pinion, and if you're mechanical, don't misquote me, but I think it was a pinion rod or something, and it said, you know, it's really important that you go get this fixed, and because the pinion rod, which sits on the steering column, could come apart. And I had this flash, and now I don't know what a pinion rod, if that's what it is, from nothing, but this video came into my head of the pinion rod, which sits on the thing, which is basically the steering column in your car that goes down inside, and it sits on something, and when the pin comes off, then you have nothing. You know, you're steering, but, you know, so your car is going whatever. So I roared with laughter because I thought, well, that would probably be pretty important. But nobody else had the video that I had attached to the thing. So I just called them up and got it. Anyways, when I was going up there, because it was so dark and so foggy, and it's a long drive, I figured, okay, well, I can put a gig stick into my car and listen to audios on there. And so I was listening to something, and I got maybe about 10 minutes, and I thought, you know, this is one of those times where I need to be more fully, at least in a physical way, in linear, because what I'm listening to is just adding and expanding to my already, you know, more fifth dimensional vibrational frequency. And I'm in the dark, I'm in fog, so I can't, and mists, and I realized that I'm, you know, so anyway, so I had to turn that off, and but that was kind of interesting. And one other thing, as far as setting time for doing things, they say, you know, I asked them, how long will this take? And they said, oh, about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that's kind of a drag. It's a day off. I don't have days off very often. And so, okay. So, but I set the intention that when I get there, they'll be able to take me right in on the appointment time, and that they'll easily fix whatever they need to fix in the best possible way. And for this meeting, I gave them 45 minutes. You know, I wanted to spend 45 minutes linear time on this, and then they would, you know, say everything's great and send me on my way. So I went in, did the whole thing, and set up usually I sit outside in a chair because Keegan's with me, and this time I was in there. It was kind of cold. It was 26 degrees, so I stayed inside and had my laptop and was going to read a book and stuff. And at 45 minutes, 44 minutes, I think it was, the guy came over and he said, well, you're all done. And I looked at my clock and I smiled. I said, great. He said, it took us much shorter than we thought. I don't know why, but he said, the only problem is that because it's so cold, our hoses are frozen and we can't wash your car like we normally do. Is that okay? I said, oh yeah, that's fine. No problem. So anyways, I went out right to my time of what I had allotted for the amount of time, packed everything up and left. So we can do all of that stuff. It's just it's calling it in, it's consciously setting it in, and not having a whole stream of doubts and worries when we set it in.
Yeah, well, that's something I've been playing with, actually. Lisa had talked about how she sets an internal alarm clock and doesn't use one for waking up. And so that is something that I've been playing with. And I have no practice in that whatsoever, but every single time that I've done that, I wake up at exactly the time, sometimes a little, like 3-4 minutes before. And sometimes when I do wake up and I check the time and I'm like, I don't have to get up, and I go back to sleep.
Right.
But that's my choice. And so
Right.
just the fact that I now feel that I'm to use your terminology, I'm flexing
Yes.
those creator muscles, and I don't have to choose that. Just because I created it doesn't mean I have to then take it either.
Right. Well, isn't there great pleasure because you're sleeping along, happy as can be, and you wake up at the time you requested the wake-up call. You look at it and you go, cool, and you roll right back over and snuggle back in. That's pretty great,
Yeah, exactly.
You've done your workout, you've flexed your muscles, you've strengthened things, and you get to snooze a little.
And that's my kind of workout, let me just say. I'm loving every minute of that. Thank you.
Sometimes I know that I have like 4 hours of sleep or 5 hours of sleep because I'm going to the airport and I was up half the night packing or whatever. I will also add that I will feel as though I've had 8 hours sleep when I wake up. And I do.
Well,
I feel great.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That one I've tried a lot for years, and it's never worked simply because I'm doing so much work when I'm sleeping that maybe it does, but it's only the portion of me that's doing the actual sleeping, and now the rest of me is
Yeah.
there seems to be a lot of that work when we're sleeping going around.
Yeah.
You're all working when you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of times people say, I had the coolest dream, and I always chuckle and go, okay, what was your dream?
Yeah, I don't often remember those, any of my dreams or my doings.
Yeah.
So there have been occasions, but those, the ones that I can actually recall in the last few years have all been instruction. Mm-hmm. In a almost in a classroom setting, which have been quite interesting.
Yeah, because we've all been in training for various things before we got here, and then continuing and getting new downloads. I guess it was in one of the Matrix movies, maybe the first one, is it Victoria, the woman who's the woman who has the thing with Nemo?
Trinity.
Okay, I'm thinking of Victoria, the one who comments sometimes cut that thing. But anyways, Trinity, and where she's going down to go into a building and she's got to infiltrate and so, and she calls up either one, I think it is to fly a chopper, and two, how to do something else.
Right.
And that movie, as well as many, 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 many other movies, that they're giving you, with specificity and particularity, things you can actually do, not because you're in a matrix, not because you're in a computer program, but because you are a creator being. And this is how it works. So you have things that you have an affinity for already, that you like to do that, or it's something you want to experience and those kinds of things. But there are other times when you need something and you can call it up and be in the space where you can know that and put it into practical use for something that you're doing.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, I've actually talked to other folks that have used terminology in that the aspect of me that is already aware of how to do this or whatever, I will call that in.
Right.
And brought to mind for me, there was only one season of it, but there was a show since 8. Now it depicted other people, but I always felt that it was a disclosure type situation where rather than it being someone else, it was just a different aspect of them that they were calling in.
Right. Well, everything has to be hidden in plain sight. That's the rule.
Right.
But most people have the pillow over their head. They've allowed, complicit in the dumbing down, that they just think, oh, well, that's kind of a cool, wacky thing in a movie, and the movie's over, and
Right.
And that's what's been counted on. Right now, that's not happening anymore, and it's really annoying to certain beings because it's not happening anymore. But yeah, so those things are all there, and once one being sees it and notices it, it already is now putting it into the more upper level consciousness so that others can connect with it.
Nice.
I like that.
Me too.
And I like that we're getting together to do these kinds of conversations where we're talking about those things. The what's possible, the playing into the what's possible field.
Yes.
And it would seem to me like, well, it doesn't just seem to me, we are in a field of all potentiality.
Everything's possible.
Right. Everything's possible.
In fact, all is possible. The interesting thing about that is that when people think about all, so they may, is this possible, or can I do this, can I do that, and this, that, and the other thing, and you can say, yeah, because all that's possible, but all is all, so everything is possible. And even that which you haven't thought of as possible, even if you got a group of 10 people together and they were planning and brainstorming and creative storming and all this kind of stuff and throwing all these things out, and they had, like this pile of all these things that are possible, it wouldn't even be that big, because all is possible. And as you get things, it creates more. So if someone pops in an idea, and that's kind of popping it into physicality when you talk about it, pops in the idea, whether you do something with it or not, whether you play with it or not, you in that local region, to you, meaning right your body and in your life, it's now out, so it's been pulled in and it's out there. But the creative force behind that and the ingredients, let's say, of that now spin off unquantifiable new things from that. So I'll use a cooking metaphor. When you have an idea about something being possible, and you even just play with it just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, like you had the idea and it popped into your head. I can surf on these cool things that just come out from my feet or my shoes when I call them. I'm just making this up as we talk. And I can hover, I can glide, but I can then just walk when I think walk, and, I touch down and walk. So the very act of creating that in your mind, even for just a moment, so the couple seconds that it took me to describe that here, is think of those as ingredients that might go into a recipe. So now all of those different ingredients are now available for others to take. And so each other adds more and more and more on in this room, in these states that we're in, on this planet that we're in, outside of the planet we're in, all the other planets, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. So you get the idea that in, a couple seconds, when every being in everywhere in all of Source's multiverses does that, you get a lot more all than you had, 10 seconds before that.
So that actually, for me, that actually lends a much broader layer of what setting a template really is then. Every thought, feeling, idea that is spoken or brought out then becomes a template to be built upon. Isn't that what you mean, really?
Absolutely. Using that as another way to describe why the control system, the false construct, some people call it the matrix and various things, although there are matrices, we are part of a matrices of ourselves, is kind of this, well, we just talked about it, so it's reversed. So I use a false construct because it's simple, and that way I don't get confused or confuse others with that. But whatever languaging works for people, it's just how you hold it, and your energy will tell you if you're kind of in the same life. But yes, and that's why the control system has been such and is so wonderful and so really in depth in its complexity. And we've talked about this and gone through all of filling everything out and creating and creating and creating, because it's on that. So when someone has an idea, and that's what I talked about in that video that I released, does it really matter, right? So yeah, because you're doing the same thing. And that's what most everybody's has been doing for many, 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 many years, decades, eons kind of thing. They've been creating that, but they've been creating it in a way that adds to the control matrix. It adds to the false construct.
Sure.
So when, think of some of the common things that are prevalent of self-doubt and this, that, and the other thing. So that creates, those are recipes. You've got all these ingredients, and the shelves are always stocked with all these ingredients. In fact, you got some super doubt, super worry, super freaked out, super, oh my God, super whatever it is. And yes, and so it keeps creating more and more and more of that. And if someone doesn't pay attention to that, and people don't have the time because they have to work all these jobs, or because they're disheartened, or because whatever, right? I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it because I don't want to send that many out. But when you do that, it creates more of it, and it firmly holds it in place.
Right.
Right.
And so when you're unconscious, most people are unconscious and simply not paying any attention at all in their relationships, in their communications, in their connections with people. They don't really even have connections, what I would call a connection. They have these very pale kind of things where because they don't truly listen.
Mm-hmm.
They certainly don't hear, and there is no real communication. And I'm not saying that as a judgment thing. I'm just saying that as it's
what is
kind of the river and the stream and flow that they've been flowing in.
Mm-hmm.
And since for the longest time, and it's changing now, most people simply don't notice anything.
Right.
No, that's true.
We've been trying to point things out and have noticed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In my own experience, because as you were saying that, I'm recalling, absolutely, that's absolutely right. Wow.
And that goes back to the being complicit. People, I know I have some good friends. I was having a conversation a long while ago back, and they said, well, what do you mean we're complicit? That complicit means X, Y, and Z. I said, yes, I know what it means, but we are complicit. And this is a very broad example of that complicity, because when we're in that, because we are amazing creator beings, and when we're in that flow of all of those low, denser, more constraining energy, frequency, vibrations, we are amazing creator beings. So what are we creating? Amazing, dense, dark things. And we're creating this matrix that's a web that flows out, just like I was talking about those possibilities, those ideas, right? Which is really cool and really great, but all those other things. And so we've been holding it in.
Right.
So right now, as we talked about before, the world as we know it, or thought we knew it, ended
Right.
from an official external, instead of mainstream media source coming through, with the EO that came out on the 21st.
Right.
Okay. So now some of us can see that really clear, very obviously. Some of us can see most of what is supposedly and supposed to be way behind the scenes under the surface, nowhere near behind the scenes and nowhere near under the surface.
Yeah.
A lot cannot. And why? So someone might say, well, BC, you just said that it ended. Yes, it did. But this is all going. Well, part of that is because people are in that same flow, because they're giving power to it, because they're this engine that has created. Same like with the filings of the OPPT 1776 trust that Heather did and completed, and said was a long time ago. Well, part of the same kind of thing, because not only did the system still give it energy, but people have still been giving the energy to the system. So the good news is, same like I talked in another video, where when you have that epiphany of, I think it was in the one with Tripp, where you have that epiphany that you are a creator being, and that even if you look around and externally from a linear perspective, your life is, really, right? You can celebrate that because you created that.
Right.
And you were masterful, and you kept doing it over and over and over and kept getting bigger. So that epiphany that we're talking about right here is really great, because now we can see it. We can say, okay, I want to play on the field of possibility. I want to play in what I'm creating. I want to play in the abilities. I want to play in that idea that the three of us have just brought up, where when you create those ideas, even if it's just for a moment, just, right, that short of space, and it lets it out there, and other people can play, and there's more ingredients in all the recipes that added to the all, which was already all encompassing in all of Source's multiverses, and I just made that more because it's always expanding. That's where I want to play. Well, that's huge, because just in thinking about that, just in having this conversation here, it shifts everything. It up-levels everything.
That's exactly what I want. I know you want it.
And now for something totally different.
Yeah, and it breaks down everything else.
Sure.
Yes. Well, BZ, I want to thank you for coming and playing today with Lisa and I.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a link, of course, to the IUV for all of your videos, and some great tools there to begin to play. There'll be a link to Heart Song Musings, and information on how to join Conscious Conversation Central, and my email. And I would love for folks to comment on this video. What are you doing in your life to expand the list of ingredients on your shelf, or in the shelf of the universe at large? And what would you like to play in as you go forward? And I remember a conversation where, in one of the Cosmic Creator calls that we had, where I was thinking, well, my mind just keeps going to the fantastical. At that point, I think I even said, and I'm ready. I'm okay with that. You just actually talked about gliding along as you walk, and that might seem fantastical, but in